All right, so I have the pleasure to introduce Dale P. Johnson. Dale is the Director of Digital Innovation for the University Design Institute at Arizona State University. He works with university leaders to develop and implement digital solutions to enable student success. Those efforts have earned him the national recognition from the WCET organization with the 2016 award, with the Sally M. Johnson Award for leadership excellence in practice and demonstrated leadership capabilities. In 2018, he was awarded the IMS Global Learning Conservation's an Outstanding Service Award for his leadership in the adaptive courseware community of practice. Dale's going to talk about a transformative project that used the adaptive platform Alex, but I'm really interested in how his principles, his alignment of faculty, administration, supports, and policies can be thought about in SUNY, whether it's with Alex, with our OER tool Waymaker, D2L with triggers, or any tool that helps us connect with our students. Mr. Johnson has spoken on the topic of digital innovation in higher ed at more than 20 conferences in USA, Rwanda, Brazil, South Korea, Singapore, Indonesia, Germany, Mexico, Russia, Norway, Kazakhstan, and Vietnam, and workshops at a number of universities. He has a bachelor's degree in science, in design degree from ASU, and a master's in public policy from Harvard University. And that learning path has combined his interests in design, engineering, and education policy. In his spare time, he enjoys traveling and building things. He has traveled to more than 40 countries, studied in Barcelona for a year as a Rotary Foundation ambassadorial scholar, and built his own solar home in Phoenix. Dale has told us he wants to make this a conversation. So throw questions in the chat. I will help draw attention to them throughout the presentation, and then I hope we have time for further Q&As at the end, but keep them coming right throughout the presentation, and I'll try to surface them and get his attention.
Thank you, Ed.
Dale, with all that, I'll turn it over to you.
What a great introduction. I appreciate that. I want to say at the start, I'm so happy when Alex contacted me to speak at the summit, because I have a special place in my heart for SUNY. When I worked in Coopers and Lybrand as a consultant in higher education, I spent 4 months working with your colleagues there in the 1990s on an IT strategy. And I got a chance to visit many of the campuses and met all the wonderful people who work at SUNY. So it's exciting to be back with you, and I look forward to continuing the conversation as we go. As Ed mentioned, I work with the University Design Institute. We work with colleagues at ASU, at other universities, and around the world to help them reimagine, design, and transform their educational processes. I lead the Digital Transformation Initiative, and we focus on creating capacity to thrive in this changing environment. Many of you will recognize these categories of challenging efforts like leadership, teaching and learning, instructional infrastructure. These are things that we're all working on to transform our institutions and continue to build this capability as the students are demanding more and more online education, and the marketplace is responding positively to these offerings. Arizona State University is a large public institution, not quite as large as the whole SUNY system, but the single largest institution in the country. And almost half of our students are online. So I looked at the SUNY numbers, and it's an interesting parallel in growth. You have about 65,000 students online as well for your entire system. So over the past 10 years, we've grown quite dramatically in our online presence for both ASU and SUNY. The university is quite famous for being #1 in innovation for the last 7 years in a row. We're very proud of that fact. Some of it's attributable to the digital innovation that we do in teaching and learning and other areas of the university. As I mentioned, we've grown quite dramatically in our online education. A decade ago, we were quite small. We built capacity. Today, we have hundreds of people who focus exclusively in online education, and I'll be interested in talking to you all more about how you're doing things at SUNY and what the future of online delivery looks like there. I'm going to talk today about a process that we engaged in to transform one of our courses, moving from what I refer to as the mass production model from the 19th century to the mass personalization model of the 21st century. We are experiencing this in every aspect of our life today. Whether you're a music aficionado and you used to buy CDs, I still have hundreds of them. I don't even know if I have a CD player anymore. Or you have millions of songs on your phone accessible at any moment in time. this transformation is occurring in all aspects of our lives. In navigation, we've become so accustomed to the mass personalization of GPS. And over the past 20 years, our trust in the technology has grown quite dramatically. Now we would expect the telephone to be able to guide us to anywhere in the world. When I was in Kazakhstan in November, I was able to navigate anywhere in the country, and I don't speak Kazakh and can't read the language since it's Cyrillic. So for us, this transformation has been a blessing. And even in other professions like medicine, where the traditional model of mass production is being replaced by mass personalization, the most recent case of this kind of technology, DNA technology, obviously, is the COVID crisis, where we were able to create a response to that and a vaccine in record time because of access to the DNA data and the ability to personalize the treatment programs. So for us in education, this is the next great challenge. We face a tradition which goes back thousands of years of teaching all students the same lesson at the same time. That model was the only model we had because we didn't have the technology that we do today. Now what we're talking about is the model for the 21st century of the right lesson to the right student at the right time. This is something, as was mentioned in the intro, you can do with many different technologies, whether you're using D2L products or you're using a McGraw-Hill Alex product or some other product. The marketplace is growing in capacity to deliver on this promise. So this is the goal. If there's one thing you remember from this talk, it's that we're trying to deliver the right lesson to the right student at the right time. So for us, of course, this has been a challenge for a long time. Many people have dreamt of mass production or mass personalization, but we see going back thousands of years, the amphitheater has been the only technology that we've had. When I went to school in the 1980s, this was what the classroom looked like. By the 2000s, we had replaced whiteboards. We had added some technology. Now, of course, we have many more technologies in the classroom, but this is the same amphitheater that the Greeks were using 2,000 years ago. So what are we doing here? We're laying a new technology on an old model. And as you can see from this image, students are distracted by the technology as much as they are benefiting from it. Here's a picture of a baby on one of the computer screens, and there are other images in this picture that show students are distracted as well. So I want to say that the addition of technology to the old model is not a successful path forward. This has been our modus operandi for the last 20 years. We need to break out of this model and seek a new path. I took inspiration from this quote from Buckminster Fuller, who's one of my intellectual heroes, about how do we change reality? Well, we don't fight it. We need to build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. So today I want to talk to you about a new model of delivering education through mass personalization. And my expectation is that this new model will make the old mass production model obsolete. So we started at ASU with a faculty conversation about what do we want to do? Well, we want to enable student success. That's our primary mission. And we want to do these following things under the objectives: improve critical thinking, enhance student subject mastery, improve retention, and instructor insight. So in our case, we attached a numeric value to each of these elements. Our goal is 90% freshman retention for our mission. We want to do 60 minutes of math problem solving every day. The students are making a commitment to this process of learning. We obviously want 90% of them to get a C or better. That's our metric for student success. And we want to reduce our withdrawal rate to less than 5%. This is the Achilles heel of many of our STEM courses, where we lose anywhere from 20 to 40% of the students to withdrawal. And for me, that's the great tragedy in our system, because students have already paid for those courses and they don't even get a grade. So our goal is to reduce that dramatically. And ultimately, we want to provide additional insight for the faculty so that they can identify the struggling students as quickly as possible. We don't want to have to wait till after the first exam in order to find out the students don't know something. So for us, college algebra was a logical first step because we've struggled for decades with this course. And I suspect many of you can relate to this story. When we looked at our college algebra class, we started back in 2008, actually, and we started seeing a pattern where our success rate was 57, 57, 59, 62, just really dismal. 40% of our students were getting a D, an E, or a W in these courses. And college algebra was probably one of the worst cases for us. So we decided to focus on this, and we had to come up with a better way. And we had tried a number of things along the way. First, we tried smaller class sizes, thinking that it was about providing a miniature version of the mass production model, but that didn't work. We didn't move the needle at all. Then we thought about recommending our students go to a community college where they could take, again, a more well-tailored college algebra course. That didn't move the needle. Our success rate was still less than 60%. Finally, we came up with the idea that we would introduce a developmental math course for anyone who was not testing into algebra directly. And at the point in time when we finally decided to abandon that model, we were actually getting 38% of our students were tracking into developmental math. They were not persisting at the university, and they were not succeeding in algebra after developmental math. So each of these different techniques were tried and had failed in our world. So we finally decided to embrace a complete transformation of the course, as I referred to it, Mass-Personalization, and that was in 2016. Now, the fateful moment came on December 7th of 2015, when all of the academic leaders on this list sat down and discussed the faculty proposal to transform college algebra. So you'll recognize that we have a very, very high-powered group of people at the university talking about this course. This is a really fundamental course for us, since it's a bellwether for student success. I'm the last on the list, and I'm the only non-tenured faculty member in the room. I was the adaptive program manager at the time. And I walked out of that meeting with a real sense of dread, because I thought by fall of 2016, we have to transform this entire course. So we were going to eliminate developmental math. That alone is a huge risk. As I mentioned, 38% of our students were getting tracked into that via our assessment, a math assessment test. We were going to adopt ALEX. I'll talk more about that as a technology. We were going to record all of our faculty lectures and place them in ALEX. And we're going to allow students to stretch the first semester into a second. This was an innovation that required quite a bit of collaboration, as you can imagine, with the registrar's office, with the financial aid office, with all types of offices. So we have approximately 9 months to put together a transformation and bring together all of these elements of the new model. We also got an agreement from the Vice Provost for Student Success to add additional in-class teaching assistants. We thought that we needed more support for the faculty if we were going to try this experimental approach. All of that led me to think we're about to hit catastrophe. It was a very, very telling moment. For those who are history buffs, this was the same date as the attack on Pearl Harbor started World War II for the United States. And I thought we would have a potentially catastrophic failure in our college algebra class. I'm being very frank here, because I was worried that the 38% of the students who had not tested in were going to fail out of this new model. And our goals of reaching 90% success were going to be undermined by the inability of the students to successfully navigate this new model. So facing that, we went ahead. The academic leadership, the faculty members all agreed that the risk was worth the effort. And what happened was a true transformation in our results. So as you see the numbers here, it starts to accelerate as we go up, and we get now up to 79% success rate using the same instructors, the same curriculum, and the same assessments. The only things we changed were the pedagogy and the technology. And that's really important because though we weren't doing a research experiment, we were making operational improvements and we were able to measure our progress over time. And given that we had started collecting this data back in 2006, we could see the trend, and the trend clearly changed when we introduced this model. Now, there's one other little element here. I hope you could see that. The small green line with 84%. That is the benefit of the stretch semester. I mentioned that earlier in passing. We turned time into a variable. The traditional model that we have today has time as a fixed element. You have one semester to complete the curriculum and pass the exams. This case, the students got the stretch semester if they could not complete in one semester to continue their studies and complete. We give that to them free. This was a major commitment by the university, over $1 million in tuition credit to the students, so they didn't have to pay for that extra semester of college algebra. So instead of developmental math, we used the technique of creating a variable out of time and giving them another semester. This turned out to be another transformational moment in our experiment. So let me tell you a little bit about why we did it first and then how we did it as part of this conversation. First, we had to set some new principles. And this is important because as a student-centric university, Arizona State is constantly thinking about how can we change our approach to reflect the needs of the students. So the faculty members developed this set of guidelines for learning principles, saying first, every student has unique learning needs. This has always been true forever, but we weren't able to address it before. Second thing, we want to provide personalized instruction. This is where we make the commitment to change our pedagogy in order to do that. Third, we think students learn best through interactive problem solving, not from listening to a faculty member solve problems. So I want you to think about that. We want them doing the work, not watching someone else do the work. This is a huge difference in approach from passive to active. And when you're dealing with the large numbers of students like we are, it's a major commitment to say we're going to try to create this interactive environment. Students must demonstrate mastery of each lesson. For those of you who are familiar with ALEX, ALEX uses a mastery model where students have to repeatedly solve the problem. And after they've solved it a number of times successfully, they achieve mastery. So this is part of the ALEX model. And that's important because the conversation is really predicated on having a technology that can establish mastery. And finally, the big revelation and through all of this, through all of our efforts in this area, was that the technology depends on the teacher. I've seen good technology ruined by bad teachers, and I've seen bad technology saved by good teachers. So when it all comes back to the pupil and teacher relationship, this is where the technology has to be helping and reinforcing that relationship, because we know that the success of the educational experience depends on that. So let me give you a little bit of background on ALEX as a tool in this process. The primary reason why the faculty wanted to use it is to get more insight into the student learning process. Our traditional process is a black box until after the first exam. Again, we're dealing with large numbers of students. Our average class size now is about 100. And our total enrollment in college algebra for a year is 10,000 students. So we have a hard time answering basic questions using the mass production model. Questions like who needs help? What do they need help with? What's the best way to help? So those fundamental questions can be answered through the use of a technology like Alex. This is an example of an infographic. This is one class of students, approximately 100. Each of these colored lines is a personalized learning path through Alex. We're talking about the number of topics mastered, and the faculty established over 370 topics that they would cover in this course. And this is a fall semester from August to December. So let me give you a little bit of a tour of this. The first thing I want you to realize is we have an initial knowledge check in Alex, and that establishes the current level of student knowledge. This is very important because if we're going to personalize the learning path, we have to recognize and we have to respect their current learning base. So you'll see some of them have zero knowledge and some have over half of the topics mastered on the very first day of class. So we have some students that go from 0 to hero in one semester. This is a great example of a student who worked hard, was very diligent, consistent. This is the student we're all celebrating because they did the work and they got the result. We also have students who come in with half of the curriculum mastered and they finish early. So we had to rethink our assessment strategy. We cannot teach these two students the same, nor can we make this student wait until finals week. We had to give the final exam the first week of October to this student. So when I say it's a holistic change, a total change in the pedagogy, that includes the assessment timing. We have a test when ready model. When students reach a threshold in Alex, they sit for the exam. All of this requires a different classroom environment, different interaction between the faculty members and the students, and the ability to deliver the final exam in the first week of October. And then again, throughout the remainder of the semester as more students complete. Now, this is the student that we're all searching for to save, to help this student succeed. And you can see they started off well, and then they started to struggle. And unfortunately, this student was unable to continue on, and eventually they capitulated. You'll see the large vertical drop late in the semester. They gave up. So we do not give up on this student. This is a student who gets the option to go to the stretch semester, and they do not go back to 0. They begin the second semester where they left off. So we do not want to punish the student for the progress that they've made. We want to help them continue on in the learning process. And that's where the university commitment, that social commitment to success of the student, it makes a difference. So we need, in order to do that, to successfully do a number of things. The first was to align our leadership on 4 levels. This is a really critical component of the success of our program. We had the faculty members making proposals for how they wanted to restructure the course. We had the department chairperson involved from the start in order to establish that the entire course was going to be transformed. We had the college dean involved. That's a conversation that often revolves around funding and additional support for the department. I mentioned that we were able to provide support for additional teaching assistants, and we had the provost. So as you think about your efforts to transform your courses, you have to think about these 4 levels of leadership and getting that alignment, because the success of any program depends on this. And clearly that was part of our model.
Hey, Dale, we have a question in the chat, and it comes from Camille Carlson. And she said, how do you comply with RSI in this model? How do you comply with the requirements for regular and substantive interaction? And I guess the bigger question is, when you're using an adaptive tool like this, what's the role of faculty members? Since you're on a slide that's talking about alignment.
That's perfect. I'm going to get to that in detail, but I do want to address it right now. That structure, the entire structure of our educational offering is codified, and we need to think about how we change those policies. I'll put that flag in the ground right there. When we do online education, for example, we have an asynchronous model where regular and substantive interaction means something different from going to class 3 times a week and sitting in a room and listening to a lecture. So in this case, we still require our students to come to class 3 times a week, and they still have regular and substantial interaction with their faculty member. So I'll go into that in more detail here in a minute. Second thing I wanted to focus on is the technology. I mentioned earlier, you have to trust the technology to deliver this instruction and insights. And I liken this to the doctors learning to trust technology. So we have a medical profession that is evolving rapidly, just like our educational profession. And they have technology tools to help them understand what's the condition of this arm. If I asked you, is this arm broken? You would ask for an X-ray or for additional information. And what the doctors have done is they've embraced that, right? They've decided that technology is not replacing the doctor. Technology is making the doctor better. This is the same thing that's happening in education. Technology is not replacing the teacher. Technology is making the teacher better. And what we're doing is we're offering these tools to our faculty members to help them. So the same is true for our faculty. How do we help them get ready for this technology? Well, we do training. We use Quality Matters as a first pedagogical training. We actually require them to experience the courseware as a student. So our faculty members take the course in ALEX so they understand the student perspective. We provide one-on-one instructional design support, peer mentoring. There's a lot of training that goes into the development of a program like this. We have over 50 faculty members who teach college algebra every year. So keeping them all aligned is a big deal. We have video production, we have community forums, and we have showcases. So it's not as simple as we provided training to the faculty and now they go and do something. It's a continuous quality improvement process. Every new faculty member has to embrace this mass personalization model. And we have had challenges. New faculty members will come in, we go through training, and then they say, I don't want to teach this way. And that's okay. There are plenty of other courses that are taught using a traditional lecture model. This course is different for a reason.
Yeah,
And
Alex
so
asked that question in the chat. She said, you talk about having the right instructors making or breaking the model. And it's what it sounds like for me is that you're just focused on providing the support for any instructor and letting them self-select whether they want to be part of this program. Can you elaborate on that? Is that correct?
in this case, anyone who teaches college algebra has to teach from the same model. So they don't say, I don't want to teach algebra that way, but they might be teaching calculus instead of algebra. So if they are hired on and they ask the chair, the chair will say, I want you to teach college algebra. You have to go talk to the faculty coordinator to understand this model. And then they come back to the department chair and say, I don't want to teach that way. The department chair can assign them to a statistics course or a calculus course or some other course. There's no shortage of work to be done in mathematics education. So this case, we have a specific college algebra model. And it's dependent on information. As I mentioned, insight is a primary driver. So getting a faculty member familiar with a reporting model, familiar with the data that's available, and accustomed to using the data, just like a doctor learns to read an X-ray and uses expertise from X-ray technicians to help with that process. So we have learning analysts, instructional designers, and other technologists to help with that process. A third element is faculty role and identity. And this goes back to the first question. So what do the faculty do now? This is a huge challenge because if we tell you you're not a lecturer and you lose that role, you may also lose your identity as an academic. And we have to help our faculty members make this transition because it's important that they assume a new role and a new identity. And what we think of as their role is to create and configure digital content. So instead of lecturing now, they're videotaping their lectures. We've videotaped over 350 lectures that we embedded in ALEX. So faculty members are responsible for that. That is the proxy for the live lecture, and it's used by the students in a just-in-time model. So when they need it, they open it and they watch it. We have to utilize learning analytics, and this becomes a new role as a diagnosing problems and identifying patterns in the student behavior that they can respond to. They provide individual instruction. This is the differentiator. Instead of thinking of a class as a common body, we think of each individual as a project or an individual who needs instruction. And that's where the faculty role changes dramatically. The faculty design new learning experiences. In addition to ALEX, we have problem-solving sessions every 2 weeks where students work in small groups. So faculty have to create that content and they have to lead those problem-solving sessions as well. And then that process of becoming a leader in that implementation or application of mathematical knowledge is something faculty members have to learn how to do. Many of them are adept at this, but some are uncomfortable. They're much more comfortable simply lecturing and communicating directly. So building this new role and helping them establish a new identity as a leader, not just a lecturer, is critical to the success.
Hey, Dale, we got a question from Bonnie. Is the taped lecture the faculty member teaching the course? And I wonder if you could answer that from the student perspective. And if I log in as a student, do I get all my videos from my instructor, the instructor of record, when I sign up for the course? Or is it a catalog of all the instructors that are teaching? What does that look like for the student?
It's a catalog. We built a library of lectures, and what the faculty members did is they formed a team, the content creation team, and they went through all of the various topics in ALEX, and they identified who was going to make that lesson. And then they went in the studio and recorded that specific lesson. That might be 5 minutes, it might be 20 minutes, depending on the coverage of that topic. So that process took months and months to do. But once you have that library, then it becomes universal. Every student who needs help with that lesson will open that video. And that helps us also track the efficacy of that video. And sometimes we have a faculty member who will come back and say, my students don't really seem to get this. I'd like to re-record that video. And they do. They go in the studio, they record a new version, and we put that in. So it's constantly improving that process. And that's a team effort. We might have a half a dozen faculty members who are recording. This is an example. We have 8 studios at Arizona State University with a variety of different technologies. For those of you who've worked in online ed, you know, this is all becoming very standardized now. We have tablets so they can write and they can solve problems and they can do what they traditionally did in the classroom. And now in the classroom, they are focused on the individuals. Again, we're changing this process. So you've heard this phrase, guide on the side, and we've embraced that. This is an example of a classroom. The students are required to come to class 3 times a week. So they do have a fixed time. We don't have an emporium model where they just drop in and do some work and then they clock out. We want them to be connected to an individual instructor. So this instructor is working one-on-one with the students when they have a problem and they can ask a question. They provide the guidance and connection if a student can't make that through watching the videos or doing more problems. We find the students also talk quite frequently, and they will work in small teams as part of a peer educational process. And we also will tell the students how they're doing. A faculty member often will prepare a short list of students who need immediate attention. Think of this like triage in medicine. The faculty member will say, today I have to talk to Dale and Ed first because they haven't worked in ALEX in the last 4 days. And the professor can see that. So the professor will come to me at the start of class and say, Dale, how come you haven't done any math? You're supposed to do 60 minutes of math every day, and I can see you haven't done any math in 4 days. And I might say, I'm sorry, professor, I had a big paper in English that I had to finish, and I was working, and I pulled 2 all-nighters, and I just didn't have time for math. That's okay. We all know that everyone is juggling the stresses of education. So as we think about that conversation, it's really about building a rapport. And our faculty members tell us they have much more conversational and productive discussions with their students now than they ever did in lecture, because they get to know each student as an individual, and they can begin to help guide them more successfully to completion, as you saw from the data that I showed you.
You're speaking about the student input and the student voice. And we had a question earlier in the chat that I just didn't find a good time to get into. Asked why there wasn't student feedback in your initial stages and your initial planning. And it sounds like you are taking some student feedback as this program evolves at different times. And I wonder if you could speak to ways that you're letting the students give feedback on this structure and this program.
Yeah, student agency is at the heart of a lot of this. That's why mass personalization matters. When we introduce this to them, it's an alien concept. I mean, they've been told to sit down and shut up for 12 years in primary and secondary school. And now we're telling them to take responsibility for your learning, and we're enabling them to do that. So as we begin to introduce this, we have to re-educate the students to this new pedagogy. And this is a natural process. There's resistance for the first week or two, then there's acceptance, and finally there's an embrace when they realize, oh, I could finish early, or I can manage my workload through this approach. So as you're thinking about this, the student is always at the center, and their voice is always involved in this. We have literally hundreds of teaching assistants who are upper class students, fourth, third, and fourth year, who are involved every semester, and they provide us with direct feedback as well. And all of that gets integrated into what I refer to as the continuous course improvement process. And we look for these kinds of data points, whether they're anecdotal or they're analytical, as we build the next generation of the course. The next piece I want to focus on is policy changes. And we talked about one policy already, and I already put my flag in the sand on this. You have to change policies. You have to make changes, or what will happen is your pedagogy and your technology will run up against the policy and they will get crushed. All of your innovative efforts will get wiped out by an antiquated policy which reflects a 19th century ideal of education. So first policy we had to implement was one version of the course, and this came up earlier. As many of you know, this is a huge challenge. All of the conversations about academic freedom and all of the conversations about the professor controlling the classroom had to be worked out, and the faculty had to agree. Now, fortunately, this was faculty-led, and they had been working this problem for a decade, so they knew they had to make some changes, and the idea of having one version was something that they accepted. Now, new faculty that join the community often have the same reaction. I want my academic freedom. I want to be able to teach my version of algebra. So the socialization of professors as they join that community is an important one. Second, we had to change from class time to competency. Now, we've already done this online in offering students asynchronous education, but we had to formally do it because many of the students, over half of them, are still on campus. So embracing a competency model is a critical part of the policy. The test when ready model that I mentioned was another one of those policies that we had to pass through the department chair and the dean to ensure that everyone agreed this was acceptable. And finally, the stretch semester. This was the toughest one. This required provostial support and approval. And you have to think about the future and not the past. Most of what we think of as our educational experience reflects a time when seat time and final exams and all of these components that we think of as part of a normal course were created as a way to measure productivity. They weren't created as a way to measure student learning. It was an effort by government entities and accreditors to impose some order on the learning process so they could measure us. So I always tell people, don't embrace the past, because the past was meant to control us. Look to the future and try to redefine the policies that will assist us with the learning process.
Hey, Dale, on that slide, we had a question from Caroline Holly, and she says, it seems like this is really good for quant courses. And I think that's the challenge that often gets thrown at adaptive learning is it works for math. What else does it work for? And I wonder how if you could respond to that a little bit. She wonders about the AI use cases or how we would do this for content that's more subjective.
Yeah, let me offer two explanations to this, because this is a really great question. The first is we have a different model for every other course. So you have math model, which is the quant model, but we do something a little different in biology, chemistry, physics, economics, even psychology, history, and philosophy. We have done personalized learning, but it has a different structure. So please invite me back for another summit, and I'll be happy to talk about that structure, because that's equally exciting. We've introduced the same personalized approach, but we have also, I think of it as strengthened the problem-solving component of that model for the other areas. You'll all recognize it as a flipped course or a hybrid model. So that's for all the other sciences. For math, where Alex, this is my second explanation, Alex came out of academia. It was developed by faculty members, for faculty members, and it has a 20-year history of developing the algorithm and the topics and the competency model. All of these things have evolved over time. And we worked closely with Alex for the last 7 years to ensure that it would work for us and for our curriculum. And a lot of the work that went into creating the algebra course was around configuring Alex so that it would match the expectations of our professors. So that's an ongoing discussion. And I found that Alex is the most mature technology in the market for this particular need. There are others, and you can even build your own. What Alex has is a running head start, because they've been gathering data for 20 years. And they can actually see the relationships between the student performance, and they can adjust their model, which is what they do constantly. So I would encourage you to reach out to vendors and to engage them in this debate. How are you modeling the curriculum? How do you structure mastery and competency? What is your assessment model? Because an honest vendor will explain all of that to you clearly. We took our entire faculty team to Irvine, California, where Alex has 200 learning engineers. And we sat down for 3 days and we drilled them. And our faculty came away from that with a really deep understanding of how McGraw-Hill has built and maintained Alex. That's where you learn to trust the technology. And I would encourage you, if you're working with other vendors, to do the same thing. Don't take anything at first glance, because it's important that you understand how things are being done and why.
Got a couple questions from Ryan and Adele, and they're wondering about if this was so successful, how it could be implemented in other classes. And Ryan specifically asked about other math courses.
Yeah.
And if it'll be implemented. And Adele kind of added on to that question and said, is there a level that competency-based adaptive learning really works at? Could it be used in higher level courses? Could it be used in graduate education? Or is it these kind of kill and drill type early courses. I wonder if you could respond to that.
Yeah, we decided that we could use this for college math too. We have a non-STEM math course, which is college math. And we found that we could utilize ALEKS for that also. So we have college algebra, which is our STEM launching pad, and college math. ALEKS is actually from 3rd grade to pre-calculus. That's their window of expertise. Pre-calculus, we experimented with it a little bit, but we haven't embraced it yet. There's a team at Stevens Institute of Technology, just down the road from you guys, right across from Manhattan in New Jersey, which is experimenting with a calculus type model. I think the company's Gradarius. And so we're working with them as well. We've asked ALEKS to consider adding calculus to their portfolio, but they think it might be a bridge too far for their technology and their capabilities. So really that is the frontier. Pre-calculus is the frontier of this particular tool. But I would expect that we will see more of these and more innovations as we go. I'm really hoping that it doesn't take another 20 years to get to new technologies. And when I mentioned we worked in biology and chemistry and physics, we've worked with other vendors in those spaces. And sometimes we've had to build something custom, and sometimes they've had a product off the shelf.
Adele wanted to know what company Stevens is using.
That's Gradarius, yeah. And
Okay.
it's faculty members from there that built that model, and now they're commercializing it.
And I have 2 more questions. You want to get running and get through more of your presentation, or do you want them
I
now?
can finish up and then we'll go to questions. Let me finish this.
Excellent.
The last piece, this is really the last piece of the puzzle, which is support. Nobody can do this alone. The first thing we realized is an isolated faculty member is a faculty member who's going to end up frustrated and is going to fail. So we have to surround them with the team. We have instructional designers, we have technologists, we have vendor personnel. We worked very closely with the ALEKS team to learn about what it did and how do we use it. We had graphic designers, video producers, librarians even helped out, because ALEKS allows you to embed content, PDFs, videos, and other things in their instructional model. So we piled on. We got as much material. We went to OpenStax and we reframed the OpenStax textbook and we placed it into ALEKS and all those things. And then I mentioned leadership, those 4 levels of leadership. So this is a team sport. If you're thinking about it, or if this is piquing your interest now, you have to start building your team. You can't expect that a single faculty member or maybe even a single institution would have the capacity to pull this off. It took us literally years first to come to the conclusion and then finally to build the actual service that we offer. And I want to finish with this quote because I think this sums up the challenge we face. Best way to predict the future is to invent it. So I want to challenge you to invent the future of SUNY. I want to challenge you to invent the future of learning, not only for your students, but for our students as well. We'll look forward to this continuous dialogue about how do we innovate on the edge of these frontiers and continue to improve our educational offering. This is where I think we make the greatest contribution to our shared knowledge. And I hope you'll find that you're creating the capacity to thrive within SUNY and for your colleagues elsewhere as well. So I'll take the other questions now, Ed.
Yeah, the first question is coming from David Gaddu, and he was asking about what other ways you're encouraging interaction between students. And he asked that right around the slide where you showed the classroom. And I asked him, does that answer the question already? And he said, no, I'm really interested in online, multimedia, those types of things. And so if you could speak to that a little bit, I think would make him very happy.
So we've found that in addition to our LMS discussion board, we had to add things like Yellow Dig and other resources that open up those conversations. Really, students helping students is the great unseen educational experience. We all know this. We all had study groups when we were in school, and we all had friends who helped us out in that calculus course when we were struggling. So we try to formalize that. And I've got some of my colleagues I know are on this webinar as well. There are many other tools in our toolkit now. And we even work with one of them that's starting to become more popular. The name is escaping me now, but it's a company out of Denver that has built an overlay that we put on the ALEX course so that students can share ideas. If they struggle with a lesson, they post that idea and then the other students will respond to that. So fostering that is really critical. I want to also talk about what I call our instructional intervention model. So when you think about the role of the professor now, you think about them as part of a team within the classroom and within the university. So first thing that a professor will do when they identify that a student is struggling, that could come from a raised hand in the classroom, or it could come from an analysis they did on the ALEX data. They will go to that student proactively and they will say, Dale, I see you're struggling. How can I help you? And that's a classroom interaction. And that's a personal consultation. And they try to talk to every student in every class meeting. So you can imagine an instructor walking around, chatting with students and trying to help them, encourage them in any way they can. The second intervention is from the teaching assistant. The teaching assistant, if a teacher doesn't have enough time to spend with a student or is struggling, they will ask a teaching assistant to come over and spend 10 or 15 minutes with the student. The third intervention is tutoring. There, the student's still struggling. They've had a conversation with the professor, a conversation with the teaching assistant. Now they're given a sheet of paper and told, go to the tutoring center for an hour, do your tutoring on this lesson and come back with a signed tutor sheet. And the final and fourth intervention is office hours. So if all of those don't work and the student is still struggling, then there needs to be a private conversation. And many of you faculty on this summit will recognize this. It may not be an educational problem. There could be a family problem or financial problem or a health problem, or it could be other reasons why a student is struggling. And what we want is we want the professor to have the final word. So it starts with the professor and it ends with the professor. And the other team members on that instructional team are there to help as well.
So I have two questions about the extended semester. And one of it is coming from more of an administrative standpoint. Another one is looking at the student experience. So the first question about that extended semester is, how did you manage that with financial aid, registrar? If you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, that's a third seminar we can do. We had to create a new grade. We created a new grade. It's called the Z. You may not have ever heard of this before because we had to invent it out of thin air. And the Z is a placeholder. They don't get a D, an E, or a W. So if a student does not get at least a C at the end of the semester, they are automatically given a Z. And what we say is the Z is free. It's your free pass for the next semester, but they only get one more semester to complete. So they have agency. If they say, I don't want to take this course, I'm going to accept my E, that's okay. You know, at the end of the second semester, they'll get the E. But if they say, I'm going to step up and I'm going to go on and study, then they could get the grade that they achieve in that second semester. So it did take a lot of effort to change the policies to ensure that it wasn't going to adversely impact financial aid. I defer to the provost. We have a vice provost for student success, and he negotiated all of those arrangements. So when you get into that level of discussion, you're going to need the registrar, the provost, the financial aid director, all those people in the room. And you had a second question?
Yeah, it's coming from Caroline. And she was wondering what kind of logistics are in place to help those students who have that Z degree and move into the second semester, to help them have peer-to-peer engagement, to help them work through that extended semester when everyone's, you know, coming in a different spot.
Yeah. So the reality is they're all coming in at a different spot anyway. They don't even know that there are first and second semester students in the same class. For example, if I took the class in the fall and I did not complete, I start in January in the spring, and my classmates don't even know I was in the fall class. I take the initial knowledge check again, just like they do on the first day of class, and I restart my personalized learning path. Now, our experience is there is learning loss over the break, whether it's the holiday, the Christmas holiday, or the summer holiday. So there's always a little bit of learning loss there. We also give the students the option to continue over the break. For example, the final week of course, when the professor sees that the student is not going to complete, they have that conversation. They say, you have access to another semester. You can continue to use Alex over the break, and you can come back in January and start wherever you are. And we do see some students who make the commitment and they just keep working and keep improving. And that accelerates their finish because they might finish in 3 or 4 weeks on the other side in January. I want to use a metaphor to help explain this because I think it's a little bit perplexing when we think about it, but it makes sense at a human level. For example, our traditional model assumed that we were running a fixed distance race, let's say 100 meters, and it assumed that everyone was lining up on the starting line on the first day of class, even though they were of different capabilities. Now, I want you to rethink that assumption. I want you to imagine a student who starts 50 meters behind. And when the first day of class starts, they start running and they run 125 meters. Now that only puts them at the 75-meter mark in the original race. So now you have a student who actually worked harder than the other students, ran further than the other students, but is penalized by our traditional model because they did not complete the race. And from that perspective, we want to give that student, we want to honor the effort, and we want to give that student the opportunity to finish the race. And that's where the stretch semester comes from.
I think we have gotten to all of the questions in the chat. We have Diane Hamilton from UAlbany talking about her Alex implementation with her course, and there's quite a bit of information. They're not copying you, but they have a lot of the similar structures set up. They have the TA structure, and so if anyone can look in the chat for that. But I really want to thank you for this presentation. It was great.
I'm so happy to do it. And I know there's lots of innovation going on at SUNY. So I want to encourage you to do that and share with one another. The Summit is a fantastic vehicle for that. I always think of it as there's 1,000 islands of innovation. We have to build bridges. So I want to congratulate Alex and the whole team for putting this together. Thank you, Ed, for facilitating the discussion. And let's build more bridges.
Thank you, Ed and Dale and everyone who attended. Really fantastic presentation. Dale, really want to thank you for your time and hoping we can continue to chat and connect and learn from each other. And thanks for everyone for tuning in. It's day 3 of the summit, and we are really in the thick of everything. And it is a fantastic event. And I want to just quickly make sure that everyone knows that our next session is at 1:30. It will be Renee Pfeiffer-Luckett from the University of Wisconsin system, who will be talking about designing a new digital learning environment. She'll be telling her story of migrating her system to a new DLE. That's at 1:30 Eastern time for our non-Eastern time folks. And then I invite everyone to come back this evening at 7 p.m. Eastern time for our Summit After Dark social networking event, and hope to see many of you there as well. So again, thank you to Dale and to Ed and to all of you for attending. Thank you.
It'd be great. Thanks for all the good questions. Have a great summit.
Thank you, Dale.